She's making fun of her. She's teasing her. You know, I was thinking Makima didn't seem fully human to me in part one. So when she crystallized herself as the main villain by the end of part one, I was like, fuck. Yeah, maybe I should have seen that coming. And she's been there from the very beginning, like from chapter one. But by chapter 30 or something, I couldn't tell who's gonna be the main villain, if there is even gonna be a main villain. It just happened, right? And by the time it happened, I was like, yeah, fuck, it's Makima, and I should have seen that. It makes sense. Of course she is that. Whereas here in part two, because I got asked who I think would be the main villain, the most similar character to Makima's role in part one would be Yoru, because she's been there from the beginning. She is a devil. Her goal is to kill Chainsaw Man and to bring full on destruction to the world, wars and so on. Uh, but I can see her as one because she's just so humanized to me. She seems so weak and so full of humanity. Maybe it's because she's a little dumb. She has her own personality. She seems so human to me. Her human form doesn't help. Uh, it just makes her seem even more human to me. It would make sense if she crystallized herself as the villain of part two by the end of the series, just because she would also be an antithesis a little bit to Makima, because Makima seemed so eerie, too eerie to be human. And Yoru seems too human to be a devil. And Fujimoto, I've said that so many times already, he likes playing with yin and yang, right? With opposites, with antitheses that attract each other somehow, that are kind of the same but really different. And this is why I also think that Asa and Denji are probably going to end up together, because they're so different, but at the core they're kind of the same, right? And they look different. Denji with the white hair. I mean, I'm talking about ink, the presence of black ink or not. And Asa has black hair. And that's already symbolic enough to be like, oh, they're opposites that belong together somehow. And that's why I think they could end up together, or they could be like the main couple goal of the series that are meant to be together. And Yoru could crystallize herself as the main villain of the series, just because she started off kind of differently uh, to Makima, but at the core they're the same. They're devils. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of inclined to think it's Yoru. But it would be nice to see a devil change. Makima couldn't be changed, but it would be nice to see Yoru get changed and become more human. If that makes any sense. Uh, Yoru becoming evil would hit harder than Power's death. Yeah, it would be. See, this is why I also see it. I can see it happening because we're already empathizing with her somehow, because she's just so human. She seems just so human to us. We like her. She's kind of funny, kind of dumb, kind of human. It's just a girl. I'm looking at a girl when I look at Yoru. And I'm putting so much hope into her being a human because she seems so human to me, and it would be the greatest betrayal and kind of punch in the gut if she turned out to actually just throw my hopes into the trash bin. It would be nice to see her and Yoru growing to like each other, to open up about each other. We saw in the aquarium scene when Yoru disappeared, Asa still talked to her and then was kind of stumped when she realized she was alone. She's growing fond of and accustomed to Yoru's presence. Their friendship, their bond could be growing as deep as Denji's and Pochita's. Just kind of, again in an opposite way, because in Denji's case, he bonded with Pochita when Pochita was outside of his body. They grew together, they lived together, and then as soon as Pochita combined with him, he never really communicated with Pochita again. Like, yeah, he did talk to Pochita, but he never saw her again. Never heard anything back. It's just him talking to himself, basically, hoping that Pochita hears and is observing. But he never hears anything back. He's screaming into the abyss, and the abyss is echoless. And here with Yoru and Asa, it's the opposite. They first grew together, and now they're inseparable and talking with each other, and now they're getting to know each other. So it's, again, opposites, but it would be kind of like seeing Guts and Griffith, warm up to each other, or at least Guts warm up to the Band of the Hawk. I'm talking about Berserk again, for people who cannot follow my conversation here with myself. In Berserk, watching Guts, who was traumatized beyond repair, finally open up to people again, forming a family, being super close to someone, loving someone, only for that someone to betray him and take everything away from him. That's why the eclipse hit so hard. Because it was so personal. It was because why would someone who loves you so much and who you love, who you finally let into your heart, why would someone do that to you? It just hurts so much more, and that's why I see the potential for Yoru to do the same thing to us. To Asa and to us, the reader. But oh yeah, the MC of Parasite. Yeah, you're right. His name was Shinichi, I think. Shinichi and Migi. From right hand. Migite. Migi. Yeah, you're right. But in Shinichi and Migi's case, that was like a happy ending, you could say. So read Parasite if you want a happy ending. And in Chainsaw Man, maybe we can have something like that too, a variation of that too. Or maybe we could have the bad ending, the eclipse from Berserk we could have there. And that would also fit too, because we have this prophecy of something bad happening in a year. And a year is enough time to grow super close to someone who also can read your mind, right? Who you can't get rid of. And honestly, the eclipse is also the reason why everyone flocked to Berserk and stayed loyal to it, because there's nothing that makes fans more loyal to a property than them experiencing the feeling of being wronged. Of being wronged, being frustrated, and never getting their catharsis. Never getting some release, some relief, some revenge. Never getting payback. They have to live with this frustration. So that would be a good tactic for a mangaka like Fujimoto to do. You bind your readers to your work, make them the most loyal and powerful army of fans on the internet by making them feel betrayed and wronged and hurt, as if it was something personal that was done to them that they didn't deserve. Nothing is more powerful than a reader's feeling of frustration because of injustice. Seeing injustice, feeling injustice, and being frustrated because of that is the most powerful feeling in the world, in my opinion. So, I guess that would be a power move if Fujimoto did that. Made us really grow to like Yoru and be like, "Aw, her and Asa, they're such a good team." And then just hit us in the face with an eclipse. You know, the eclipse in Berserk was also was a genocide, but on a smaller scale than an apocalypse would be. But it was also something that was inevitable, that was written into space-time, that was prophesied. The blessed king of longing was supposed to be there at that time and do that. It was supposed to happen. And here, an apocalypse is also foreshadowed. And people believe in it, and it's something that is inevitable, that you cannot stop, and that is gonna happen. So you have this build up that you know is gonna happen, but that you hope is not really gonna happen. That's what you had in Berserk in a similar way. Because the first few chapters, you had the result, right? You knew it had happened. But then as you read the flashback, the Golden Age arc, you're like, I don't want it to happen. Is it really gonna happen? And then it happens and you're like crying and you're like, fuck, I knew it was gonna happen. But I like the journey to how we got here so much that I don't want it to happen. So, here you also have this. You've been told the apocalypse is gonna happen, a great terror is gonna descend upon Earth. And it seems inevitable. So now, as you're, reading this journey towards that date, that fated date in the future, and as you're growing close to the characters and seeing them on, you could experience something like that. Thinking, maybe it's not gonna happen. Maybe everything's gonna be okay. Maybe the inevitable can be avoided somehow. Maybe Chainsaw Man's gonna save the day. So yeah, those are my thoughts, just, off the dome upon seeing this. So let's get back. I'm sorry, I didn't read the chat that much. It would be so Kino. That's how I felt about the snowball fight when the chapter dropped. Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, see, this is a powerful tool that writers can and should use in their work, because once you promise a result, even though you haven't planned it through, you promised a result. Aki's death that will be so terrible and Denji's gonna cause it. Maybe Fujimoto hadn't thought of how that's gonna happen at that point. He just gave some eerie prophecy too, right? And you're reading and you're not really thinking about it. You're like, that can't happen. And then it happens and you're like, I knew it would be happening, but I don't know why I tried to tell myself it wouldn't happen. And when it comes, it hits harder. I've told that to a friend already, because a loved one recently, 2 years ago, it was my grandma at that time, you already know that, so I don't need to conceal their identity. My grandma had cancer, actually several forms of cancer, and it was getting worse and worse. And we knew, someone who's suffering from cancer that is incurable, they're gonna die, you know that. But still, when it does happen, it still catches you off guard. You knew and you were prepared, you thought. But then when it happens, it's suddenly. Even now, as we live, we know we're gonna die. But once someone you know dies, it's like, yeah, of course everyone's gonna die, but when someone dies, it's always sudden. So, yeah, it's a powerful writing tool, in my opinion. Give your reader a result already, even if you don't know the journey towards that result. It's also good practice, right? Prime example, again, Berserk. We got the result in the first few chapters, and Miura the mangaka, hadn't even thought of how the result would have gotten to where it is right now. Like, how this result could have happened. And then he did the flashback to explore himself how that could have happened. And he did, and it worked, and it was a masterpiece that would always be remembered by fans as the best piece of fiction, so much so that they think the rest of Berserk is as good as that. Which it isn't, because from then on, once you're caught up with the present and you've arrived at the result, now what the fuck do you do? Especially if you've written yourself into a corner like Miura did with Griffith / Femto being untouchable. Like, how do you get revenge on a god that you cannot touch? That has wronged you immensely, but that you cannot reach, ever. How do you do that? So, once you're at the present and you don't know where to go from here, you're lost as a writer, as Miura was, in my opinion, because everything that followed the eclipse was shit, except some parts. There were some parts that were exceptions, because they actively dealt with the story of the Golden Age arc. They actively continued the main focus of those arcs and the themes of those arcs. The rest is just, it feels like filler. Everything else is just fucking filler. Filler, or just going completely against the point of the story. And I mean Casca and her getting her mind back through magic. That is fucking insane. You couldn't have. It's like when you get writing, you need to write something, and a child makes an absurd story, makes up an absurd story, and then as you're like, oh my god, what the fuck happened? They're like, it was all a dream. So everything was for nothing. You cannot just write something and then it was all a dream. That is the laziest shit you could come up with. Same with healing someone from trauma using magic. That is the furthest thing from realistic, relatable, human. Don't do that. So, but Berserk was good, as you had the result, and now you had to work towards the result. And we had the result, we had the result with Aki's prophecy, his death, and now you work towards that. And it hits you hard when it happens because you find out so much about Aki and his past. That's why it hits you so hard. That's why the snowball fight scene is so tragic, is so heartbreaking. Because the journey towards that result was very personal. And the same thing with the eclipse in Berserk. You had the result, you know what's coming. But, building up towards the result is what makes you pay more attention to the story. It's what makes you appreciate everything and everyone you get to know along the way towards that result. And by the time that result comes around the corner, you're still, even though you expect it, you're still slapped in the face with a big surprise somehow. So yeah, it's a powerful tool for a writer. Just throw something out there and then build a way towards it. Have some scenes that you don't know how they're gonna connect. Scene A is gonna be in this position on a timeline, on a chronological timeline in a story, in this position, in scene B in that position, scene C in that one, and then just build something in the spaces between. And that is the story that's gonna sell. And now, as I said, a powerful method to keep your fans chained towards chained to your story is make them feel frustrated and wronged because of some injustice. That is always powerful. Casca healing would have been 100 times better if it was a realistic, slow process. Exactly, just like with Guts. Why did he get the grace of healing slowly and in a human way, but Casca didn't? And also, did she need to heal? Do we need to heal people that are, yeah, of course, you know how they used to be before, but some people, when they have a child or a partner and something traumatic happens to them, either, a physical trauma or like a mental trauma or both, and they're not a vegetable, you can still communicate with them, they're still there, and they're still functional somehow. They're just not the person they used to be before, or sometimes they aren't even functional. You need to feed them for the rest of their life. But like, some people really experience that. How would they feel if they read Casca's Getting Well story? They'd be like, well, good for you. But this is real life. This is my partner in this wheelchair that I bathe every day. And I still love them. And they still mean the world to me. And they're still valuable as a human being like this. This is the real world. A real human. And real pain. So, I would rather take that for Casca. I would rather have her, her brain shutting off was already a response to her trauma. Her brain's response to what was happening to her in order to keep her safe and healthy. Sometimes you gotta just accept that. And you can still love that character just as much. When Griffith had that fantasy of being someone who needs to be taken care of for the rest of his life, he imagined that. In the end, that turned out to not be him, but Casca. But Casca never got that grace of having a nice family home, a dog, a partner that cares for her. That was just a fantasy a man had about himself, because of course a man would be cared for by a woman. Of course he gets that kind of grace. But the female character, the main female character of this series, nah. Why can't we have that? It would have been so much more human and so much more full of soul. And again, I am ranting about my frustrations about Berserk, but still, do you see what I'm doing? It's been, how old am I? Almost 10 years since I read Berserk, and 7 or so since I dropped it because it was so shitty. And I still can't stop fucking talking about it. Because the fact that it turned out shitty is also frustration. And what makes fans the most loyal to a work, towards a work, a piece of fiction? Frustration. Frustration that it could have been so much better. It could have been so much more than it is. This feeling like someone else could have written a so much better story than Miura. It could have been this or that. What if it happened like this instead of how it happened in the manga? Oh my god, I wish this happened instead of that. This frustration still keeps you tied to the fictional work. Look at me, I'm a prime example. I am still loyal to Berserk, even though I fucking hate it. I hate what it has become. Miura was a pathetic imbecile. I mean, as a person, as a human, probably. And as a writer, And I'm saying that not because I'm insulted by his writing skills. Okay, maybe he was a shit writer, but that wouldn't mean I need to insult him. I'm insulting him because he was also a lolicon, and a lolicon supporter. that's something that I hate. So I don't. I hate Berserk. I hate Miura. Yet I still can't escape Berserk. Just because one part of the story was so good that it was perfect for me. With this frustration, with this sense of injustice, it tied me to Berserk. And then with the story just going downhill in quality, that it made me go away from Berserk. I dropped Berserk like a hot potato. But still, the thought of, oh, what could it have been instead, still makes me keep talking about it. So there we go. That was a therapy session, I guess.